everyone, and welcome to thorough newspaper analysis presented to you by LawSikho. Let's see what articles are important from the Indian Express and the Hindu today, dated July 22nd, 2020. Firstly, this article is from the Hindu, titled as Towards Robust Data Regulation, which talks about the recent NPD committee, which is the Non-Personal Data Committee, and the various anomalies or the vague provisions that are attached to it, and in what way personal data or being the non-personal data is important for the growth of a nation. Second, a reset for agriculture, which is from the Indian Express, as very recently and lately we have been discussing extensively about the role of agriculture for being Atmanirbhar Bharat. And today in this article, the author has given a very new angle and a very important angle to this discussion, wherein we will try to understand that not only the quantity of food that we have in India is important, but also the nutritional quality of this food is important, and in what way can this be achieved. And thirdly, we have the news and flash column, in which we'll be talking about the crisp news points that are important from the prelims exam point of view. So this is the LawSikho test prep course introduction for you all, and all the aspirants viewing this can definitely go to the official page of the Lord of Courses Judiciary test prep course that we have at LawSikho, and you can also download for yourself this free study material right now also from our official page. The link has been there in the description box. So where we have various test prep courses, and we're excelling in the Judiciary test prep course, and we really encourage the viewers to go and have a look at this. So this is the MCQ for today, which will which is from the discussion to be followed further. PASEX recently seen in news is: first, a new fiscal policy of RBI to control the inflation. Second, a new potential COVID vaccine. Third, a naval exercise between USA and India. Or fourth, a government initiative to ensure safety of passengers during travel in coronavirus pandemic. Just do one thing, that all of you can make a guess to your answers, and just let's see that whether who is able to guess the answer correctly once we are dealing with the content related to this question. This is the descriptive question for today. India should not only become Atmanirbhar in terms of quantity of food grains, but also in the nutritional quality of the food. Discuss in detail how can this be achieved and what are the potential challenges in the way. The answer to this question has to be written only within a word limit of 250 to 300 words, and thus it can be easily put up in the comment section below. We encourage that all the viewers viewing this do write this answer, because answer writing is a very important exercise when it comes to our mains exam, and LawSikho would definitely make an initiative to review these answers. Let's start up with the first article for the day, which talks about data regulation. On 12th of July, the Non-Personal Data Committee released a governance framework which raises many concerns with regards to regulation of non-personal data. Basically, the Non-Personal Data Committee has brought into the open forum the governance framework, or in the manner it will be governing, but there are various things that are attached to it and are causing a lot of confusion and opposition as well. We'll be dealing with it in detail, but before that we need to understand that what do we mean by non-personal data, and what is the difference between non-personal data and personal data. Basically, non-personal data is any set of data which does not contain personally identifiable information. This, in essence, means that no individual or living person can be identified by looking at such data. Now, let's take an example of our Aadhaar card. Can anyone make a guess right now that will Aadhaar card be considered as a source of personal data or non-personal data? Yes, Aadhaar card is definitely a source of personal data, because the kind of information that is available in our Aadhaar card, our name, our father's name, the place where we reside, our phone number, and various other information, we can easily understand as to who are we talking about by seeing the Aadhaar card. It even has a picture of that particular individual attached to it, and thus the kind of data or the kind of information Aadhaar card is providing is personal in nature, and through this information a person can be personally identified, and that is why it is considered to be as the personal data. But non-personal data is of such nature which though serves the purpose of data, which gives good statistics and also gives the correct information as well, but the information of the personal identity of any individual or group of people is not possible to be achieved through this non-personal data. Right, for example, currently in newspapers, every now and then we see that this and this number of cases has increased in this particular city. Now here, the names of the patients or the particular, to say, personal details of these patients are not at all released, but still the overall number of these patients that give a better idea of the spread of coronavirus in that area is definitely given. Now this data is enough for construing various kinds of information, but it is non-personal in nature, and that is why the personal identity of the individual that this data is talking about cannot be taken away from this non-personal data. And thus it is said that non-personal data is very important when we talk about the growth of the nation, because on one side it also upholds the right to privacy of the individuals, and on the other it also serves for the betterment and growth of the nation at a larger scale. But now let's understand that what are the issues that are involved in the NPD, or the Non-Personal Data Committee's governance framework. So first of all, it is about the key stakeholders. According to this governance framework, the idea of communities as data principles is introduced ambiguously. First of all, let's understand that what do we mean by data principles. Basically, the individuals or the people that we're talking about in here who give their information are the data principles. For example, if I have an Aadhaar card, so for this Aadhaar card, I am the data principal. And if the government of India is taking care of keeping this information secure and to make sure that this information or this personal information of mine is not misused in any way, then in this case, the government here is the data custodian, which we are just going to study in the next point. Thus, data principal is the individual or the group of people who are giving their data to some other entity, and data custodian is the other institution entity. Now it could be the government, any private company, for example, who is in the responsibility to take care of this data and to ensure that no misuse is done through this data. Thus, keeping in mind the key stakeholders, it has also included communities along with individuals and people. It is also included communities as being the data principles. But actually, who are we referring to as being community is not clear, and thus we do not really understand that which class of people has been considered to be as community here. Then next, data custodians, as it is not clear whether this data custodian can be the government or just private companies or both or just any one of them. And also it is not clear that how these communities would be able to engage with the custodians, which means that what kind of relationship and give and take would be there between the principals and the custodians is still not clear. Further, the custodians can potentially monetize the data. Now, this is one of the points that is making the entire NPD committee bring under a huge question mark, because it is made clear in this framework that these custodians, now be it the government or the private companies, which already is not clear that who are we referring to as the custodians, but still they can potentially use the data to monetize it, which means that they can potentially use the data in a way through which they can earn something monetarily in economic sense or financially. Now, this actually makes the entire purpose of this very questionable, because if they're able to monetize the data, and if they're given this permission that they can potentially monetize the data, there might be a chance that they would sell this particular data to some other entity, and in that transaction, this data might be misused or misplaced for that matter. Next is the data trustees, which says that the relationship between the data principals and the communities and trustees, data principal communities and trustees is not clear. Basically, data trustees are those entities that work in the favor and always in the best of the benefit of anything. And thus, the relationship between, again, these data principal communities and trustees is not clear in this framework. And for last, data trusts have been also, that power, composition and functions of these data trusts are also not established, and yet trust can also be considered as a type of custodian, and thus it is important that the particular whereabouts, the power, composition, functioning and everything about the data trust is clear, but it is definitely not done. With this, we can construe that data, being it the personal one or non-personal one, in today's scenario is very important for growth of any nation. But in such a case, it is very important that the data is kept very, very safe in the hands of the custodian, and it is important that the people or the principals who are giving this data to the custodian, they are ensured that neither their privacy would be hindered and nor their data will be misused. And in such a scenario, it is important that we understand the need for making acts or legislations like the Personal Data Protection Bill and the NPD committee for that matter very strong and resilient. With this, let's jump to the next article for the day, which talks about nutritional self-reliance. The author says that the current cereal surplus phase is momentary, as India's per capita consumption of protein, meat, poultry, fruit, and vegetable is among the lowest in the world. As in the previous sessions also of our news analysis, we discussed that India has witnessed an unprecedented growth, or to say an unprecedented hike in the food grain that we are holding currently, because normally on an average, according to the Food Corporation of India, India holds annually 43 MMTs, that is 43 million metric tons of food grains. But this time we have witnessed holding 100 million metric tons of this, which is actually a very, very huge jump or leap for that matter, because it is more than double of what we normally hold. But it is the author says that alone this is not a matter of celebration, because currently India's per capita consumption of protein, meat, poultry, fruit, vegetable, etc. is already very low. And once we try to come out of this phase of this decelerating or dropping economy, and once we try to cover up and we would move more towards the growth, this consumption or more per capita consumption would increase, and thus this momentary surplus that we are enjoying will just not last long. But then the author also says that the need of the hour is not only to be food secure in terms of the quantity, like for example raising the quantity from 43 to 100 MMT, but it is also important that we make India nutritional self-reliant as well, because obviously while we are talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, we also talk about investing in the human resource, and human resource can be done with only when we have good food, good amount of food, and good quality of food as well. Because for basic functioning of any human body, we need basic nutrients, which India is actually being facing very harshly the situation that India is, the government is not able to provide nutritional food to a very large section of the society, which definitely is not a good thing to be occurring. Then the author gives an 8-step approach, which is a very crisp and nicely drafted approach, which can be taken up in order to become nutritionally self-reliant as well. Firstly, forecast nutrition requirement for 2050. So the author says that we should forecast, that is, we should try to predict that what is the requirement of nutrition by the time of 2050. Now, why this time period of 2050 has been used by the author is that he says that this will be a time probably when everything that we are dealing with currently or that we are struggling with would become stable, be it the population, the employment, non-unemployment, or to say the nutrition or various other things that we are currently oppressed under. But by 2050, the world, or specifically talking India, would be in a more stable position, and thus a plan for that particular time should be forecasted regarding the nutrition requirement. Secondly, draw a production plan. Now, once we are done with the nutrition requirement plan, we should have that how are we going to achieve this nutrition requirement by means of production, and thus we need to have a production plan for animal husbandry and growing crops, considering the agroecological zones and changing climate. Now, this is something which makes this approach of the author very contemporary and very updated for that matter, because he is not only saying to meet the nutritional requirements through a production plan, through animal husbandry and growing crops, but also puts into account that we should also consider two things. Firstly, the agroecological zones, which means that which agricultural zones offer what kind of ecology and what crop can be better grown in that particular area. For example, if we take the case of Haryana, we know that rice, wheat, and sugarcane are the three most subsidized, crops in India, and that is why farmers tend to grow these three crops repetitively, and even in those areas which are ecologically and environmentally not supportive of this particular grain. For example, in Haryana, now even though by various kinds of technologies, the water has been made more readily available in the areas, but still, talking about the general ecology of this area, it does not really support the growth of rice, for that matter, even in Rajasthan. But various and huge parts of Haryana and Rajasthan are still witnessing the cultivation of rice. This actually is disturbing the very ecology and disturbing the water balance and also the nutrition in the soil. And thus the author says that we should not only focus on making the production plan, but also focus on the zones of agroecological combination, and we should see that which areas or which agricultural fields offer what kind of ecological benefits, and according to that only a plan should be driven. And also the changing climate, because now we know that the climate which used to be 20 or 30 years ago is not the same as today. And also if we are planning something for 2050, then also we should keep in mind the rapid speed of changing climate, and then only we should draft a plan accordingly. Thirdly, incentivize the identified crops. Here, this is the very argument which we were discussing right now, because in India, only 22 crops are the ones that avail or that are able to get the subsidy or the minimum selling price subsidy from the government, and all crops are the ones of which the farmer has to bear the entire burden. And also the reason that the three majorly subsidized crops of wheat, rice and sugarcane are heavily subsidized by the government, that is why people and basically the farmers are choosing to grow only these three crops, because these are the ones that are heavily subsidized. But the author says that we should incentivize these identified crops. Like once we have done the survey and we now know that what kind of crop is supported in what kind of agroecological zone, then these particular crops should be identified and they should be incentivized, keeping in mind the area, and practices by designing a risk and price support strategy. And thus the government should not put a blanket subsidy on just 2 or 3 kinds of crops, but should make an effort to subsidize the crops which are endemic to particular area and are needed and are more viable in that particular ecological zone. Next, shift to payment for farm ecosystem services from incentivized production. Basically, he says that from the basic and the regular one system of incentivizing the production, we should shift to payment for farm ecosystem services. That what are the services required for maintaining the particular ecosystem in that farm, they should also be incentivized and they should also be financially supported by the government, and not just the complete production, but also to say the factors of production, so that the farmers are more incentivized to take up that particular method of production and they get more of output through that method. Fifth, government must reorient to calculating the real cost of growing food. And here, the government should not take into account just the very to say basic market policies that are going on, but the government should make an effort to understand that what is the real cost of growing that particular food, and dependent on that real situation, the government should make efforts to help the farmers, now be it in the sense of financial assistance or through seeds, fertilizers, etc. Sixth, investment in a robust market intelligence system, just like the recent reforms that have been taken place in the APMC culture or the APMC framework, wherein the government has tried to liberalize the produce and the marketing of these products in the marketplace. But though it has also attached with it some kinds of anomalies, but that is also a matter of separate discussion. But yes, market intelligence, like for example, we have the government e-marketplace, or we have the mandis also for that matter, wherein now it is possible that we can list our agricultural products on government online portals that can help the farmers to receive good amount of and comparative to say buyers for their crops. And thus market intelligence system should be made more, it should be made stronger. Seventh, prioritize human capital over infrastructure. This is a very, very nice point which should be really focused upon, because all the time when we try to make specifically agriculture better, what we try to do is we invest more and more in the infrastructure. For example, providing better seeds, better equipments to the farmers, better fertilizers, etc. For that matter. But we leave behind the importance of human capital, that what can be the output of investing in the human. For example, if farmers are trained well, as in the recent scenario in the locust attack, the farmers of various fields were not even equipped and they did not even know the information of dealing with such a situation. Had they been trained beforehand about the very potential environmental risks or other risks attached to their agroecological zone, they might have been able to deal with it in a better situation. And thus it is important that human capital in all the spheres, now be it the farmers, education of the farmers, and also of the authorities that are functioning in this direction. So all the vacancies should be filled up, and in the research and development wing of the agriculture, we should fill up the vacancies, and we should focus more also on developing the to say psychological strength of the human capital. And finally, we should begin a 20-year awareness campaign across India for a healthy eating habit, because obviously once at one side where we are making efforts to produce healthy, we should also make efforts to convince the population to consume healthy. And one example of this is the Eat Right movement in India, which is followed in various states of India, which focuses on promoting the idea of eating healthy foods and and demotivate the people to eat unhealthy foods which are not good for their health. And thus an awareness campaign of similar nature should be made and should be started for a 20-year time span. With this, we understand that not only the quantity of food grains in India is important, but also the nutritional quality of that food grain is important if we really want to become Atmanirbhar. And thus the question for today, the descriptive question for today also is in the similar direction. And we hope that now it is quite clear for you all to understand that what is the need for nutrition first of all, and in what way can this be achieved. In the answer, even points more than this 8-step approach can be used, and there definitely can be inculcated along with these points. With this, let's discuss the news and flash column. Firstly, the N95 masks, which are very common in discussion, but here there is one important update in this regard, that the Union Health Ministry has cautioned against the use of N95 valved mask. If you would have noticed, so there is a small valve kind of a structure attached either on the left or right side of this mask, and the Union Health Ministry has said that this valved mask is not able to protect the an individual properly from the virus, as it does not offer desired protection against COVID-19, as it says that the exhaled air goes out of the mask without filtration, and thus if somebody is really contaminated with the virus and still wearing this N95 mask, he is still exhaling the virus outside in the outside world, and people can definitely catch this virus. But another thing that needs to be kept in mind is from a prelims point of view thing, that here in N95 the N stands for non-oil, which means that this mask can be used against substances that are non-oily in nature, and thus definitely, because when we sneeze or when we breathe, then the particles that we have in this procedure, they are non-oily in nature, and thus this mask though is capable for being used in non-oil substances. And by 95 we mean that it provides 95% of protection against the unwanted agents. But if really this is able to achieve the the very meaning of its name is under question, because it has been recently cautioned, as we just understood. Next, serological survey. It's just that we should understand and know that what do we basically mean by serological survey, because very recently in all the newspapers it has been coming that the sero survey of Delhi or sero survey of Maharashtra or any other area for that matter has revealed that this percentage of the population has developed antigens or the antibodies. So what basically do we understand by serological survey? Basically, a serological survey seeks to assess the prevalence of disease in a population by detecting the presence of antibodies against the virus. Basically, a test is conducted on individuals for testing that how much, if any, or how much quantity or what level of antibodies have they developed within themselves, and depending upon that, the prevalence of disease in that particular population or group of people is construed. For example, recently the sero survey of Delhi claimed that approximately 22% of the population has the antibodies, which is comparatively quite low, and for a better immunity of the entire population, we need a higher level of antibodies through the sero survey. And as per the serological, and as we just discussed, as per the serological survey conducted in Delhi, 22.86% of the respondents developed the IgG antibodies. Basically, this is known as the IgG antibodies, and a large number of infected persons remain asymptomatic. Thirdly, Manodarpan initiative. So the Ministry of Human Resource, the HRD Ministry, has launched the Manodarpan initiative, which with an aim to provide psychosocial support. So just we should pay attention. It is not just psychological support, but psychosocial support. So also in the terms of psychology and also in terms of psychology, and support to whom? for students for their mental health and well-being, because it has been noticed lately that due to the COVID-19, the mental health of various people, and specifically keeping in mind the students, has been really brought at risk, and thus Manodarpan initiative by Ministry of Human Resource Development will focus on such psychosocial support and counseling to these students. Next, Space Exploration Day. Every year on 20th July, Space Exploration Day, and we also call it as the Moon Day, is celebrated to mark the anniversary of the man's first historic landing on the moon. Can you make a guess as to who was the first man to step on the moon? Yes, it was Neil Armstrong. So on July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz became the first humans to land on moon's surface, and thus commemorating that day, we celebrate 20th July as the Space Exploration Day, or also the Moon Day. Next, largest artificial highland in Kaziranga. As just yesterday we discussed that the Kaziranga National Park has been almost 95% of that part of it has been drowned under the flood, and even huge parts of Assam is also have also been drowned under the flood. So recently, we know that the various animals in the Kaziranga National Park have died due to this overflowing water. And now, to deal with it, the government of Assam has proposed to build a 32-kilometer long artificial highland, which will be the largest artificial highland to be constructed till date. And it will be done for sheltering animals from annual floods. So basically, the animals would then have an opportunity to climb up this highland in case the water has logged it down under the area, and so that they can save their lives. Presently, there are a total of 114 man-made highlands in Kaziranga National Park, but this one will be the largest one. 2020 Nelson Mandela Prize. The President of UN General Assembly, Tijani Mohammad Bande, has announced Guinean doctor Morisana Koyate and Mariana Varidonians of Greece as winners. Basically, Nelson Mandela Prize is given by the United Nations General Assembly to commemorate and celebrate the life of Nelson Mandela, who we all know had such a great role in fighting against the apartheid in South Africa. And thus, this award recognizes the persons who dedicate their lives to the service of humanity. Thus, a Nelson Mandela Prize, and to whom has it been given this year, is important for our exam. And lastly, PASIX, as we just discussed in the question that what do we mean by PASIX, is the Indian naval ships recently conducted a passage exercise, which in short is known as the passage, with the US Navy's USS Nimitz. So the name of the carrier is USS Nimitz carrier strike group near the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So three things need to be kept in mind as to what is PASIX. It is a naval exercise, and it is a short form for passage exercise, between whom US and India, and where? Near the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So from India, INS Shivalik, INS Sahadri, and INS Kamotra and Rama. And from US, USS Nimitz along with 2 US ships took part. So this also can be, this actually can be asked at INS Shivalik, Sahadri, Kamotra, Rama. Where have they recently participated, and so, and this should be kept in mind. With this, we are done with today's session. We thank you all for keeping in touch with us, and stay with LawSikho for further more informative sessions. And thank you so much.